Good morning, dear viewers of Maritime Africa Live, the voice of maritime professionals in Africa. It's always a pleasure to be with you on this program to have insightful discussion in the maritime sector in Africa with you, our viewers, through the comments and our different guests. Today, instead of having a topic to discuss, as usual, we are going to discover a great name in the maritime sector in Africa. A woman who, after having contributed in different ways, at different levels, and in different countries for 34 years in the maritime sector, has decided to go further by running for the post of Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization. Her name is Nancy Karigithu. Good morning, Ambassador Nancy.
Good morning, Carlos. Good morning,
Ha-
viewers.
Good morning. I hope you are very fine.
I'm very well, thank you. And
Okay,
I'm
it's
honored to be on
yeah.
your show and to speak with your viewers.
We are also honored to have you on this program despite your tight
Th-
schedule.
Thank you.
So,
Mm.
Mrs. Karigithu, we would like to know more about you.
Yes, Ambassador Nancy Karigithu, Special Envoy for Maritime and Blue Economy for Kenya, and the immediate former Principal Secretary for the State Department for um, Maritime and Shipping in the government of Kenya. Now, I'm also honored for the purposes of this show to be the nominated and nominated by His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya and endorsed by the African Union to run for Africa for the post of Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization. Thank you.
Thank you too.
Mm.
That's very good to hear that the African Union has endorsed you for
Thank you.
this election.
Thank you.
You've retired a month ago to become the special envoy for shipping and maritime and blue economy of Kenya. Uh,
Yes.
what are the prerogatives of this new position?
Now, this new position, actually, I took it a few months ago before I retired. I've
Okay.
now left the PSS office to concentrate on this and also on the campaign for the IMO Secretary General. And of course, it's to issue advice on overarching issues to do with the blue economy. As you are aware, these are cross-cutting uh, sector, impinging on so many other functions of government, and therefore I cut across all that and bringing synergy to the different facets of the
Okay.
blue economy. Yeah.
Okay, I
Mm.
see.
Yeah.
You have been working in the maritime sector for more than 30 years, I think 34
Sorry.
years. Was it a
Yes, indeed.
child's dream?
Now, I think, let me say that for me to come in the maritime sector, actually, when I tell people where I grew up and where I come from, they don't see the connection because I grew up in rural Kenya,
Okay.
over 600 kilometers from the sea. And it was a hot place. They grow rice there. That's where I spent my formative years, where I began school. But I had the fortune, when they say that it takes a village to raise a child, you're impacted as a child by experiences from different people. And I had the very good fortune of meeting an expatriate teacher because my parents were teachers. And therefore, in that teaching community was an expatriate from the UK, because that was when our education system still relied heavily on expatriates from the US and the UK. Now, this lady introduced me to the Reader's Digest when I was very young. In fact, that was before I even started school. And then she used to go for holidays because as a foreigner, she would tour the country and she would come with stories of where she had been. And she comes to Mombasa and she brings the family a gift of a cowrie shell. And strangely enough, When you hold the cowrie shell to the ear, it has a humming sound. And she told us it's the sound of the sea. And she would that sea and showed us how to make paper boats. It would rain and the rain would leave puddles in the water, and we loved floating from a few minutes maybe those paper
Okay.
boats. So
Yeah.
I had this strong curiosity to see this sea. And the stories that would come also from her visits was that the sea goes for lunch and comes back in the evening. Of course, today I know it's the ebb and flow of the tides, but I had this fascination to see the sea. And therefore, when I was 17, I went to the coast to study, actually chose deliberately, intentionally to go and study for my A levels in the coast. And that's when I saw the sea for the first time. At that time, I had no clue that there were careers associated with the oceans because, as you know, information to do with the blue economy is not your regular staple on career decisions. And therefore, when I finished my A levels, I went and did a law degree. And because I'd fallen in love with the coast, I came back. And after 2 years, I got the opportunity to join the ports industry. That is where now my mind opened. And I was curious and I wanted to learn more. Again, my village stepped in and I got a scholarship from the government of Canada to go and study international maritime law at the IMO International Maritime Institute based in Malta. And my world opened. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's a very good history, and
thank you.
it's very good to know how the whole thing started. And you have served as the Director General and Chief Executive of Kenya Maritime Authority for 9 years. What
Yes.
has been your biggest achievement at that post?
Oh, thank you. Now, let me say that first and foremost, the most significant thing for me in joining the Kenya Maritime Authority, by the way, I resigned from the Kenya Ports Authority after some time because I felt there was more I could do for the maritime sector. And therefore, I set up a private office as a lawyer. And that's when I started working for IMO as a consultant. And I worked a lot in Africa in helping to governments to set up maritime administrations. So when I was coming to the Kenya Maritime Authority to start the Kenya's independent maritime administration, I was actually, or rather, it resulted in me breaking the mold because it was the first time I was among a very few number of ladies who came into the space where before, in stereotypical fashion, only men had worked before. There were very few women at the top of government institutions in Kenya, and I took the role of the first female at the helm of the maritime administration. And of course, it was thrown into my face that I didn't fit. I was in the wrong place. I didn't have the qualifications to work like the previous holders who are former either chief engineers, but mostly captains, master mariners. And it was told to my face that I didn't have the qualifications even to work as a spanner boy on board a ship. And of course, this was a bit, it became a motivating factor for me to prove everybody or the naysayers wrong. Let me say that it was a steep learning curve for me because I realized that although by that time, from my experience, I was grounded in technical knowledge and also the professional skills that I need. But I quickly found out that I needed a far more important skill set because I needed to know how to create, build, develop, and keep teams motivated in order to deliver on the mandate that we had. And I needed to learn how to navigate and bond with many diverse stakeholders within the public and the private sectors, build goodwill, and also garner support for the institution, and also work with various political bodies within the nation, within the region, and of course globally, because the maritime sector is international in nature. Now, leading the review and enactment of the national maritime laws, which had remained unchanged for very many years since independence, that had meant that we'd fallen by the wayside. We'd been blacklisted as a maritime nation in a number of issues, including the maritime education and training. I think that was the most challenging exercise that I ever undertook up to that time, because the requirements of having to navigate and deal with a multiplicity and complex array of stakeholders in a sector that was very lowly understood meant that we learned to innovate and do some, things differently every day. But it also taught me that whatever the situation, it's only me and me alone who held the key to lead and motivate the teams. And because of this experience, it also firmly sowed the seeds in me to champion the mentorship of girls and women in the maritime sector. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And so we can see that you've done a lot at that position in Kenya, but you also worked as a consultant for different international institutions like IMO, African Union, the Economic Commission for Africa, the East African Community, and the African Union for different countries in the eastern and western part of Africa. How were you able to affect the maritime sector in Africa through all those different consultation work?
Thank you. Now, let me say that, like I said, I had left the government, the Port Authority, which is a public sector, to start up private consultancy. And this is when it coincided with the time that IMO was encouraging governments to separate the maritime administration from mainstream government into standalone institutions for better management, better decision making, and also for the sector to, to grow on its own and become the engine of the economy. So in this, I gained wide experience, a lot of experience working as an IMO consultant, because it involved assisting governments in Africa, going in and helping to establish or strengthen where they were already national maritime administrations, setting them up as national functioning institutions within, of course, the government. And this involved creating or advising and helping governments to create the right policies, legislations, and frameworks for the development of Africa's blue economy, including a very, very key facet of that, which is maritime education and training.
And tell us, what are the different countries that you've worked with in this case?
Okay, I remember when I was joining the Maritime Authority, I left Uganda on a Friday and joined the KMA on Monday. But I worked with Ethiopia, I worked with Tanzania, I worked with Ghana, and Zambia, the Gambia, many others doing different things. And of course, I had a stint also at the African Union as the maritime transport expert, which meant then impacting and doing sector documents that could be followed, and also interpreting the decisions of the ministers in ways that then the governments could take and implement. And some of the work I did was the precursor for the review of the African Maritime Transport Charter.
Oh, okay. So you work with the IMO, you worked with the African Union, you've worked at different levels in different countries. And what have you learned from all those experiences that makes you the best candidate for the Secretary General of IMO?
Now, let me say that this exposed me because in this role, working as a consultant, of course, having intimate knowledge of how IMO worked, because I was, as it were, delivering on behalf of, or working and partnering with IMO to deliver on the mandate, safety of shipping, issues to do with maritime security, preservation of the marine environment. All those are the core issues for which IMO was established those many years ago. And in this process also, I became a consummate, the foremost and consummate diplomat for Kenya's maritime industry, both locally and abroad. And I was able, within this space, to be elected and serve as the chairperson of the IMO Technical Cooperation Committee, which was a first for Kenya. And as you are aware, this is one of the 5 working committees through which IMO executes its mandate. Now, my experience as chair of the TC committee availed me invaluable insight and experience in consensus building in a multilateral environment, which IMO typifies. But it also enabled me to see the big gap pertaining to the inclusion of women in the sector. And this is one of the things that led me, in partnership with IMO, in founding the Association for Women in the Maritime Sector in Eastern and Southern Africa. And the work also gave me wide experience both within governments themselves and the IMO, and the interaction and what, how they need to work together. And therefore, I got in-depth understanding of the maritime sector and how IMO works. It grounded me in the technical expertise. Like you've heard, I started from the bottom, as it were, the factory floor, and rose up, in terms of operations and delivery. And in my last role, I was responsible for policy making, and that, has resulted in a seasoned practitioner in me in the maritime sector with vast experience, particularly from the global south. And therefore, I believe, because the maritime industry is international in nature, I believe I have the tools and the experience and the exposure to build the bridge between the North and the South on contemporary global issues, especially those that are currently dividing IMO member states. In this, I need to add that Kenya as a country has been long known for her strong record on multilateralism and South-South triangular cooperation, which has been evidenced by a number of actions that the country has taken. If I may cite the hosting of the first ever global sustainable blue economy that was held in Kenya, a blue economy conference that was held in Kenya in 2018. Most recently, the last year, the co-hostship of the second United Nations conference that was held in Lisbon. And if I may say, it will be remembered, Kenya never hesitates to step on the plate. And during the time that we had challenges with piracy in the Indian Ocean, it's Kenya actually that stepped on the plate and availed her judicial and prison systems for the trial and incarceration of pirates. And therefore, I am proposing we are a trusted pair of hands, and we mean good for the sector. And this is something that I believe that we can do, because if you look at it, until Kenya started availing its prison systems and the judicial system, the suspected pirates would be released. And when this happened, we started seeing piracy coming down. And Kenya with AMISOM played a role in securing the waters from pirates. So I'm coming on that platform. We're a trusted pair of hands, and I will be able to deliver as Secretary General.
Okay. And I would like to know when for the first time you get into contact with IMO.
Like I said, the first time was in 1983.
1983.
Because that's when, within the IMO program for capacity building, I was given the opportunity to train at the IMO International Maritime Law Institute in Malta. And that's when my world opened.
Okay, so we can see that you know very well the institution that you are trying to take charge of.
I can confidently say so. Thank you.
Okay. You also mentioned the women in the sector and the fact that you help in creating
Mm.
WOMESA. Can we can you talk a little bit about why you decided to set up to work in setting up this association and the different objectives?
Yes, like I have told you, I had a lot of skeptics when I joined the maritime sector, especially at that high level. And it was a time that women were not known in the maritime sector. And working with IMO, and that time we had the MDGs, and IMO had a program for the empowerment of women and integration of women in the maritime sector. And I knew that I wanted to create more space for the girls to work in the sector. When you look at the dismal statistics that reflect that less than 2% of workers in the sector are women. And yet, we know that we can never achieve the SDGs, ambitions unless we have everybody, all hands on deck. And that's what made me to very, very strongly support this call. I remember during my tenure is when we had, as a country, after 40 years of independence, the first lady who came up to train a young girl to train as a ship captain. And that had a big impact on me to see how much the potential was, not just in Kenya, but also for the region. When I went to Ghana in 2004, it's the first time I met lady captains, and I remember it had a major impact on me, Captain Beatrice. And I said, well, there's so much space and we can do better. And therefore, bringing in, with the support of IMO, Eastern and Southern African women to come together, provide role models for the young girls, mentor them, uh, you know, strengthen them, become visible to them and show them that it's possible. That was a very big motivation for me. And I'm glad to say that it's no longer a novelty now.
Yeah.
It's something that girls, and women take. It's one of the issues we've started seeing now. Even the universities wondering what is this in the maritime sector that young people don't want to come to the university or would rather forego to go and do the maritime training. So I'm glad that we were able to get that opportunity and to step on the plate and to motivate and inspire young girls.
And for sure, when you
Mm.
will be the Secretary General of the IMO, you will be able to inspire more ladies in the sector. We are all hoping for that.
Absolutely, because
Yeah,
with visibility, then you strengthen the faith
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
yes,
That's it.
it can happen,
Yeah, yeah,
and also you led, we will be able to lend credence to the work that IMO has doing.
yeah,
That you will recall that last assembly, actually IMO came up with a day dedicated to celebrate. Women in the maritime sector,
for
the
sure.
18th of
Yeah,
May.
yeah,
So this will be adding visibility to the work that IMO has been doing, because growing a sustainable and resilient blue economy will only be possible if we fully include and involve the women and their potential, because this is what will benefit society and the economy by expanding the pool of talent to better address the demand for skills, and in turn advance all the 17 SDGs. This
yeah,
is, being at the helm will help young women develop the right self-perception and believe that they can succeed in this career path, apart from just like I said, the stereotypical uh, careers they've been conditioned to believe.
yeah.
Yes.
And I will also tell you that the first group Maritime Africa has been set up by a woman, also by a
Yes,
woman.
Wima. Yes,
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 so
yes.
there is a lot of women in this sector. who wants to inspire more the ladies to come
Indeed. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
the sector.
Seeing
We
is
have,
believing.
yeah, saying is believing. We have
Yeah.
Aisa Tiam who said you are such an inspiration for all women in maritime sector. How do you intend to change things for women in IMO regarding to how usually men feels about giving more responsibility to women?
Now, one of the things that I believe holds women back is, lack of self-belief, because over a long time, we've been conditioned to believe that we can only succeed. This is a male dominated sector. But of course, I intend to support all the policies and programs build on what the IMO has done so far in order to create that confidence and to make this, create wider spaces for the women to come. Of course, having a woman at the helm of IMO would be a very strong demonstration of the strong
Yeah,
commitment that the
exactly.
organization has to support gender equity with
Yeah.
a view to correcting the gender imbalance in the sector. And of course, I would do nothing less than support that. I would be coming at a time when the advancement in digitalization, for example, is creating new roles and a need for different skill set and opportunity for more flexibility. And therefore, spreading the message wider, because this creates more space for women to join. Thank you.
Yeah. We have Did you check who said, "Hello, Maritime Africa. What does she think about the port legislation around the protection of our resources, fish in Africa? Your opinion about the port security in the different ports?"
Port security in the different ports. Yes, of
Yeah,
course. I think the issue with port security taught us something, that we have to work together. We cannot have, each of us working differently. The space is international, and I think collaboration, cooperation, and working together with our partners, borrowing what works in other places, and
yeah,
being committed, having an all hands on deck approach. That's what will support us and will help yield fruits. So we no longer can afford to work in silos as countries. We need to pull together.
yeah.
And I hope that.
He wants also to know your view about the port legislation around the protection of fish
Port
resources.
legislation in, of course, we
Around
we
the
we
Go
we
ahead.
must realize that as we fish, these are our resources, but we also have to conserve. So as long as it's geared towards conservation, because that's when we get more from it, we cannot afford to plunder our resources. So there has to be that balance. I don't know in what respect he's asking, but I would say that legislation that recognizes the need to balance the exploitation alongside conservation is the way to go.
Okay, another
Mm.
question. We have Philip JJ who said, "Great candidate for Africa and the world. What will be your priority issues as IMO General Secretary once in office?"
Now, let me say that the IMO right now is on the cusp of a great transition that must bring everybody on board. And as you are aware, that is the issue of decarbonization. And we know that decarbonization has almost divided the IMO. And the main thing is to bring uh, acceleration, because we need it. We must have the change to decarbonization, and also implement those changes that we need in a manner that is just, equitable, and fair to all IMO member states. The other thing I see is that the maritime industry has been very old-fashioned, and we need to transit in the 21st century more digital, green, of course, and equal, particularly in terms of digitalization. I see the issues of security, cyber security, the issues of piracy, the issues of militarization, but most important, the human element. We came from COVID, and COVID really exposed our seafarers, who are our main, asset in terms of our shipping and global trade, and their welfare and ongoing desire for gender mainstreaming the maritime sector to create more talent is going to be one of the major issues of the incoming Secretary General. So I see space to create more strong collaboration and partnerships in order to ensure common solutions for the common problems we have in the sector, and also the space for to undertake actions that ensure that IMO remains united. IMO remains as a member state-driven organization in line with the dreams of our forefathers, but overall that IMO remains as neutral, transparent, proactive, and efficient, an institution based on mutual respect, fairness, equity, and justice, because this is the output that will create greater confidence from member states, industry, and stakeholders. And all of us together need to work towards that vision. Of course, we also have the secretariat and staff. You can't forget them and you can't leave them behind. So I'm looking at promotion of merit, recognition of talent and hard work, as well as equal treatment for staff, working together as one United Nations family in order to foster a more vibrant, happy, and engaged workforce, because this will engender productivity and motivation to deliver for the member states over and above what is expected of them. Now, in terms of decarbonization, I've already said that we need to accelerate, but I want to add that we will need to, I see the need to incentivize the availability of the solutions we need, and that is the low and zero carbon marine fuels and technology. This is paramount, but also we must not lose sight of the need for safety. So it calls for retraining and capacity building for the workforce in order that we still maintain on the mandate of safety of the sector. So of utmost importance is the human resource capacity building and training of the maritime workforce to help us transit. There's a lot of...
Thank you. We are at the end of this interview, of this program, and Ambassador Nancy, do you have anything that you would like to share to finish with our dear viewers?
I want to say, because I'm addressing an African, it's global, but we are in Africa. I think I want to say that technical cooperation is very, very important for us, and collaboration and partnership. But I want to say that increasing the space and bringing more voices to the table will be critical in order to bring more African voices, more global South voices, because this is a sector that affects us all. So I want to urge all of us to look at the new amendments to the IMO that increases the membership of the council, and also increases the length of the service of that council, because then we look forward, we could be able to look forward to having more voices from the global South that makes for an IMO that is even more representative of our interests, brings more voices to the table, more vibrant discussions on issues that affect us all as a global community, so that we create cohesiveness, more cohesiveness, and also agreement on issues that affect us all within the IMO and the maritime sector.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Nancy, for being with us on this program, Maritimafrica Live. And thanks to all our dear viewers who interacted with you on this program.
Thank you.
We are all hoping that we're having you again, but as the Secretary General of IMO.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to engage with your audience. It's been a very enriching experience for me. Thank you. And I hope
Okay,
that by
so
the time I'm coming back, we will have, taken the steps to expand and enhance the geographic representation and participation within IMO by, of course, acceding and to those and accepting and acceding to the amendments to the IMO Convention that is expected to enlarge the IMO Council to 52 from 40, the current 40 member states. Thank you.
We are all hoping. Thank you very much, and thanks again to all our viewers, and see you next time for another edition of Maritime Africa Live. Goodbye.
Bye, and thank you. Thanks to the
Bye.
viewers too.